What's up, everybody, and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. If you're watching us, you see it's just me and Mike. Meg's just going to join us in a couple of minutes. Mike, we got a 12-game slate. It's week 3. We were talking pre-show about pricing this week. So I want to start there before we dive into the 12-game slate. Talk to us about pricing this week versus maybe weeks 1 and 2.
I think it's a little tighter overall, and some of that may be a product of just wanting to maybe spend up more for quarterback than we have in the first 2 weeks, which definitely changes things a bit. But, you don't get, for example, Jaden Daniels is on the primetime slate this week playing on Monday Night Football, so we don't have that option available to us. And just overall, we got receivers at the top like CeeDee Lamb, some of the running backs, that have consistent volume are pretty pricey. So it is a fun week. It's definitely different than weeks 1 and 2, though. You do have to take some more harder stances for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Also looking forward to playing both slates, the main slate and the afternoon slate. I did okay on the main slate, but I actually cashed pretty well in the afternoon slate. We have 5 games this week on the afternoon slate as opposed to the 3, so a little bit more to choose from for better or for worse. But for those of you that are new to the show, we run through these 12 games pretty quick. We give our best plays. We give out our cheat sheets at the end of the show, Mike's top 3 at each position, but it's essentially a game-by-game preview, and we'll touch very quickly on showdown at the end of the show because we do have Thursday Night Football, Jets, Patriots tonight. All right, Mike, let's get started with a big-time one. Let's go to Eagles. Now plus 2.5. They were a 3-point favorite over the summer and heading into week 1, but now they're plus 2.5, plus 3, depending on where you look. But more importantly, this is a 49.5 point total, probably dance around that 49 to 50 range. I got to ask you, is this one of the games that you're focused upon, or is it potentially a fade knowing that other people will be focused here?
I'll definitely have some interest and some focus, but it's certainly all on the Eagles side for me personally. So I bet the Eagles plus 3. I like the Eagles a lot to win this game outright. When I look at these particular teams here, look, the Saints have been good. They had the good fortune of being in a positive game script in terms of having the lead in that game because of a play in terms of Alvin Kamara's long receiving touchdown. On paper, it's been the luckiest individual play of the entire NFL season in terms of EPA. And then hit Shaheed again, which again, I think they're great players. I think it's highly unsustainable. And I think the first week they obviously played the Carolina Panthers. So I want to pump the brakes a little bit on the Saints side, mostly because I think the Eagles are going to continue to dominate. They dominated the Falcons on Monday Night Football in that game. It didn't come out with a win, but they have been absolutely dominant in terms of time of possession and controlling the ball. By far the most drives of 10 plus plays. They've already had 8 drives of 10 plus plays this season. That's going to be critical. I think they're going to have success doing that here, which is going to keep the Saints on the sideline. So I'm off the Saints almost entirely here. I do like Britton Covey. I see that in the chat. I think he's a fine punt play at 3,200. But I really like Devontae Smith. I think he's going to have all the targets again. I think Jalen Hurts is in play because of the rushing upside that he possesses. But for me, it'll mostly be Devontae Smith as I think he's locked in for 10 plus targets again.
What about a skinny stack in this, or I should say just like one player from each side here and you get out? I mean, I do agree with you on the Jalen Hurts front and just this offense, maybe milking the clock and having these long sustained drives, which of course means Jalen can get there. It means Devontae Smith, maybe Saquon Barkley can get there. But, there's other games I like versus this one, and you just bring up a good point with respect to clock management, but there are guys on the other side like Alvin Kamara, like Chris Olave, like Rashid Shaheed, and even Derek Carr that people want to play. So if you were to play anyone on the Saints side, who would it be?
Olave for sure would be the number one target for me. He's got the most sustainable workload going forward in terms of what we've seen, and he really hasn't flashed and hit much of the upside because of the deep passes that have connected to Shaheed and, again, Kamara. So for me personally, I'm completely off Kamara here, would be on Olave, if anyone.
All right. Well, I know we have somebody that may actually like Alvin Kamara here. Meg, you didn't miss much. We just started with the Eagles and the Saints. And listen, this is a game that a lot of people like. Mike was just talking about how he kind of likes the Eagles side more than anything, probably avoiding a lot of the Saints. You have a slightly different take, I think. On the Saints side, who do you like?
I mean, I agree with Mike on Olave. The underlying usage is there. Shahid is also getting absolutely a ton of target share, and it's not just the deep balls. He's getting, I believe, over 20% target share. So I like Shahid at his price, Lev Olave, but I do like Kamara too. I mean, look at the running backs that have run on the Eagles the first 2 weeks. So I really don't mind a chalky Kamara. I know it's been an amazing start for him, and feels like it could go at any minute. But I mean, I love the Saints offense with the new coordinator, and I'd like actually the matchup for Kamara as well against this Eagles defensive line that isn't so vaunted as we thought they would be.
Yeah, listen, we as Commanders fans thinking maybe if Clint Kubiak was on our side, things would be a little bit different.
So different, right?
Lamented that last week. All right, well, let me ask you this before we move on to the next game, because I do think we should spend a little bit more time on this game with the high total and with these two potentially dynamic offenses. Mike really liked Devontae Smith, and that makes sense because we see Jalen Hurts. He likes to lock in on his number one receiver. A.J. Brown likely not playing. Any thoughts on Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley?
I like Devontae Smith. I like Hurts, but I actually probably like going back to Barkley the best. I don't actually mind both running backs in this game. Obviously, there's some narrative about probably him being pretty angry about bouncing back after that drop pass that cost the Eagles the game. But I actually loved the volume and the workload in both the running and pass game for Barkley. And he's coming in lower owned. What I'm seeing now is around 8% ownership or fairly low owned. So if you're getting Barkley at that low ownership in this high total game, I actually like going to them. Saints do pretty well against wide receiver one, so I don't mind Devonta Smith, but I actually probably like Barkley a little better.
Yeah, and I do like some pieces of this game. I'll say that I'm probably going to be stacking other games, but if you want to stack this game, I don't have a huge argument with it. And certainly if you want to take some pieces here and there from this game, some of the pieces that Meg and Mike alluded to, that makes sense. Let's go to a game that doesn't have as much fanfare, but has a team that has been putting up a lot of points. Broncos plus 6.5 in Tampa, playing the Buccaneers. This total's crept up from like 39 to 40. Not really telling us much in terms of, hey, you need to play this game. But Mike, I'll start with you. Baker Mayfield, he looks pretty good. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I think we were kind of big on Chris Godwin last week, and he ended up turning out really well. I don't really like anybody on the Denver side. Any pieces or any plays in this game, Mike?
Mostly just the Bucs defense would be in play for me here, but yeah, mostly off of it. We've been really running hot on Chris Godwin the first 2 weeks. Really played well. Frankly, two great matchups for him. Number one, Washington. Sorry, guys, but the defense is historically bad.
Yes.
And then playing indoors in a controlled environment in that game against Detroit, a game that we likely thought was going to be competitive and something they can push. So for me, it's a week that I think that Tampa Bay does focus on the run a little bit more and just get in, get out with a win. So I'm going to be off Godwin on this particular game. And for me, it's just Bucs defense. If you want to take a shot on running backs, I think it's fine. Wouldn't shock me if we see a heavy Bucky Irving game. He gets in the end zone, but you're not doing that unless you're playing 150 lineups kind of thing. So for me, it would be Bucs defense, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think keeping an eye on Rachaad White and his status. Obviously, you want to keep an eye on that because if for some reason he ends up not playing, Bucky Irving at 5,100 would be a pretty great play. Meg, before I go to you on this game for your thoughts, I do want to remind everybody our Fantasy Football Today DFS contest is live. And Nada has already put the link for that in the chat. It's really kind of at the top, but it'll also be, if you listen to the podcast, it'll be in the podcast description and on the YouTube description. It's only $5. Really good contest. 200 people, top 20 get paid out. I'll be in it. We're all in it. So, you can kind of go up against us, see how you measure up. Meg, anything in this game that you like? Godwin is 6,500. It's a reasonable price for sure. Mike Evans, 7,200. Baker, 6,300 on the Broncos side. I don't see anything I love. How about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. I'm already kind of keeping track of kind of the flow charts, who you can run against, who you can pass against. You can run on Denver. But to Mike's point, and your point with Rachaad White banged up, I probably will likely stay away there. But like you said, if for some reason White was ruled out for any reason, then I'd be really interested in Bucky Irving. But I don't see myself getting there if White's in and both of them are playing.
Yeah, I think we can move on largely from this game. It's not a game that we seem to have a ton of interest in terms of stacking, running anything back. So let's move ahead to The Packers. This is an interesting one to me. The Packers +2 at the Titans. We don't know if Jordan Love is playing. I don't think he will personally. And I think this Titans defense will get him even if he does, because I don't think this is the game for Jordan Love to come back early too. Mike, you're in Tennessee. I'm going to start with you again on this one. Anything in this game that you like?
I still love Jacobs. He's my favorite running back play. Definitely like him over Kamara. Definitely like him over some of the others this week. And it's really comes down to a matter of volume and just running poor. He could not have a worse start to the season, Josh Jacobs. And it might sound weird to hear that, but it's frankly true. He's touched the football 50 times, literally 50 times in 2 games. And he has longest rushes of 34 and 32 in each of those 2 games, and has yet to find the end zone because he's had 2 touchdowns called back on holding penalties. I think this is a great spot to back him. He touches the football minimum 25 times again in this game. And it's just a price point play. He's 6,700. If he had landed in the end zone on either of those 2 games, you're talking about a situation where he's scoring up over 20 fantasy points. His price point would be 7,200 to 7,500. So for me, it's just a simple volume play. It's really hard to go wrong with someone is touching the ball at least 20 times.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Meg, I have to ask you, and I have to compliment you too, because if memory serves, you kind of had an out and left field play. Hey, Calvin Ridley might be a play, and he was excellent last week. Yeah. He goes up against the Packers defense. He's 6,000. Perhaps more importantly, people want to focus on Tony Pollard with Tajay Spears being banged up, but it does look like Tajay is going to play. Anything you like? Let's start with the Tennessee side. Anything you like? Are you going back to Calvin Ridley? Are you out on the Titans? And do you like Josh Jacobs or anyone else in the Packers offense?
I definitely agree with Mike on Jacobs. And as far as, I like the Ridley play because I have him a lot in best ball too. So loved seeing that last week. And I don't mind going back to him this week, to Ridley, that is. I do have a little interest in Pollard as well, but I was waiting to hear on the Tajay Spears reports. But he, has been getting more kind of the high leverage touches and stuff like that. So I do have a little interest in Pollard as well.
Yeah, that one I'm probably going to be out on. I might not be in on Josh Jacobs, but listen, I said that last week, and he had, I think, 17 points, but he should have had a lot more, like Mike alluded to. So volume is king, and it does look like Josh Jacobs is getting the volume. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add in on Jacobs. If you're worried about some of the chalk ownership on him, I do think it's a decent situation. First of all, I think he's going to get squeezed a little bit because of Kamara, and Mason. But I do like in your situations where you're worried about that chalk running back, I do think that the stack that is still underutilized in a lot of situations is still going to be the correlation with the defense. So I do love the Packers defense in this one. They're 3,200. We've seen a number of turnover worthy plays from Will Levis and company there. So I think the game's just lower scoring environment overall. And I do love the correlation with Jacobs.
Yeah. Will Levis. I'm trying to think of a comp, like, cause he's, he can be okay sometimes, but the manner in which he turns the ball over, it's just sometimes. Go ahead.
If Calvin Ridley was not a world-class wide receiver, they get blown out by 3+ touchdowns by the Jets. If they hadn't had the one play to Ridley, that was frankly all Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
They get absolutely trounced in that game.
Calvin Ridley turned back the clock 3 to 4 years. He looked really spry, really great. Hands were great. Everything was great. You know who wasn't great? The Indianapolis Colts. Mike, I lectured everybody last week about, hey, it's Malik Willis, take the gift, all this. And you said on this show, because we talk against the spread, we talk props as well. You gave out Malik Neighbors last week on this show as well. That came in incredibly easy. But you said, hey, I think the Packers might win this one outright. The Colts looked bad, but specifically, Anthony Richardson looked bad. Defensive line has taken some hits. Like their run defense is going to be a problem, but they face the Bears at home. Here's my thing. Mike, I want to ask you about Anthony Richardson, because to me, Richardson reminds me of Lamar Jackson in that no matter the matchup, no matter like what the point total is, he has the ability to have that Lamar Jackson game. Now, he looked really bad. So far this year, he's looked pretty bad, actually. But do you see where I'm going with Anthony Richardson? And do you agree enough to say, hey, I don't mind playing him this week in week 3 against the Bears?
So I'll say that Richardson is never someone that's just unplayable. He is playable anytime he takes a football field. Now, having said that, he's not a quarterback. He's an athlete, and he's a tremendous athlete at that, but he's not a quarterback. And I'm glad you brought up the comparison to Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson is a quarterback now, and he does have the ability to stand in the pocket and throw. I'm not sure that Anthony Richardson does yet. He might in 2 to 3 years. He might take that evolution. But the way that he plays right now, it's kind of miscast, frankly, on this team as well with the weapons that they have. So I'm not super high on Richardson. Having said that, again, he's got the upside to score 20, be QB1 literally anytime he takes the field. So he's a great athlete, which is far more important in DFS than it is in real life football. So yeah, I'm not playing him, but certainly you can make the case for having an Anthony Richardson team any week of the year.
And Mike, I'll come back to you to see if you like anybody in this game. But Meg, anyone in this game that you're willing to play? Like some of these games we might speed through, but I mean, it's worth noting it's a 43.5 point total, which, some of these games are like 38.5, 40. So, I mean, it's not like a horrifically low total. And we do have Anthony Richardson. Michael Pittman hasn't done anything, 6,100. Josh Downs is back in this game, it looks like. So that makes the receiver core even more muddled. If you thought you wanted to take a shot at Alec Pierce or Donnie Mitchell, like now Josh Downs is in there. To me, this is an Anthony Richardson or a JT game. I don't know about anybody on the other side. Do you like anybody here?
Yeah, not really. This is a stay away game for me. Bears defense is tough. I mean, Mike said it perfectly. Any game Anthony Richardson could go off, but there's too many other games that I want to target. And then on the other side, this could be a good bounce back spot for the Bears because the Colts defense is someone you could certainly target, but I just haven't seen enough yet that I like too many other pieces in other games.
All right, Mike, same answer for you, or is there somebody you might be getting to like a Jonathan Taylor in this one?
I mean, look, Taylor's the same story. Like he's fine. Generally someone I prefer to target in anytime touchdown markets and just leave out of the DFS equation. Trying to look quickly. I don't think I have much in this game it looks like it's just a little bit of Jonathan Taylor. And then both defenses. The thing that I will say on the Chicago side defensively, they kept him in that game against the Texans. Caleb Williams was terrible once again, and I think the game will slow down. I think he'll progress a lot in the next 3 to 4 weeks, but the defense still gave him a shot. That game was a lot more competitive against the Texans because the Bears defense was very, very good in that third quarter.
Yeah, Jeffrey Lightsey, shout out to you. You said Bears defense and I'm out. That makes sense because the Anthony Richardson experience can be much like the Will Levis experience where you just, there's just some bonehead plays, some bad throws. Honestly, Anthony Richardson, it wasn't just the throws. Even when he was running the read option, it didn't look right. He was making the wrong decisions. And honestly, Shane Steichen, I thought, made some bad decisions too, leaving Richardson out on an island and not running Jonathan Taylor a little bit more. We got to get to more games, more 1:00 games and then 4:00 games, then our cheat sheet and Mike's top 3 at each position. Let's see what's next. We got the Chargers, Steelers, but then Texans, Vikings, which I think is interesting. We're going to cover it all right after this message from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
We are back on Fantasy Football Today. DFS. Let's go to, I was going to go to Texans Vikings, and that would have meant I would have skipped right over the Chargers Steelers. That's probably what people want me to do with such a low total. This one, I believe, is 35.5. Meg, I'm going to start with you here. I mean, J.K. Dobbins has been awesome. He's 6,400. I don't know that he can survive this type of efficiency. Quentin Johnston broke out. He's only 4,600, but this is the Steelers defense at the end of the day. Justin Fields still only 5,400. He always has that running potential, so I think that's interesting. Pickens 5,700. I'm moderately interested in the names I just mentioned. Are you, and is there anybody else you're interested in?
I mean, first of all, this game is like a boomer's dream come true.
Yes.
It's going to be like, 60 rushing attempts or something like that. But, so you've got to consider the running games, but I just feel like I like, honestly, running backs in other games more, and it's not like the prices, like you said, Dobbins price is up. The defenses are good too. So I just don't think I'm going to go to it on this low total of a game.
Yeah, Mike, any thoughts on this one?
It'd be Justin Fields or nothing for me. As Meg talked about here, a boomer's dream for sure. It's Big Ten football. CBS, we broadcast Big Ten football this year. It's awesome that this game is also on CBS. You get it both days, Saturday and Sunday this week. So it's going to be a lot of running the football. Look, I think Justin Fields has been really good so far for them. And I think that is going to be something that continues. It is worth noting he's fumbled the football in each of the games so far this year. He didn't lose them, but he has dropped and fumbled to put the ball on the ground in both games. So low scoring environment, limited number of plays, turnover potential. The defenses are certainly in play, but I think at this point, everyone watching the stream probably already knows that the defenses are in play in this one.
Yeah, I'll say this. I played the afternoon slate last week, and granted, that was only 3 games. In the afternoon, we have 5 in week 3, but I played Justin Fields as my quarterback in the kind of smaller single entries in the 300 to 500 range, and he didn't have a great game, but it did allow me to get players in like Trey McBride, for example, that I wouldn't have otherwise played. Of course, he landed on a touchdown and got me to the pay line in these single entries, but there are scenarios where Justin Fields has a very modest game, but that 5,400 allows you to do some things that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So certainly something to consider. And we know he does have the upside. It's one big run that could potentially get him there. All right, let's go to the Texans, the Vikings. Texans 2-point favorites here in Minnesota. It's a 46-point total. Pretty interesting game to me. I mean, we got to monitor Justin Jefferson. It does look like he's going to play, but he did have that contusion. Nico Collins had a foot yesterday, but that was probably a rest day for the veteran. I think Tank Dell is really interesting at 5,200. Meg, I'm going to start with you. There's a lot of pieces in this game, including Joe Mixon, who looked injured last week, but looks like he's going to play. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, it's tough, like you said, because there's a lot of interesting pieces, a lot on the injury report, though, too. So I believe Jordan Addison may be coming back. Naylor has looked good as a cheaper play for the Vikings. You got to love Justin Jefferson coming in at very low ownership. And, Nico Collins on the other side has just been an absolute alpha. So I kind of like all these guys, but I just don't know how I'm going to fit them liking so many other pieces in other games. So I'd say all of the guys I mentioned would, maybe not Addison, but Jefferson, Naylor, Nico would be in my pool to consider, but I don't know how much I'll be able to get to them, price considered and such.
Mike, I kind of like the Vikings in this game, money line or +2. I think this Brian Flores defense is going to give CJ Stroud some fits. With that said, I'm looking at Sam Darnold at 5,500, Justin Jefferson 8,600. That's a lot. Jalen Naylor at 4,400, like Meg said. I mean, that's maybe a double stack potential there. You run it back with like a cheap Tank Dell or something. I don't hate that in tournaments. Do you?
No, I don't hate it in large fields. I like Darnold. He's popping the most at 5,500. I know it's weird to say to play Darnold naked because he has no rushing upside really to speak of. But if you just need a value quarterback this week and you want to build something with, say, Tyreek Hill looking at volume, CeeDee Lamb, and, Alvin Kamara for those that like him, things like that, there are cases to be made for essentially just punting quarterback with Darnold in this one. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I'm not going to get to anything here. I think this is an awesome real life football game. I think it's not so great in DFS because of price points and injury reports, right? So we got both running backs really banged up. Aaron Jones took some hits, left that game, is questionable, but going to play here. And you look at Joe Mixon, same thing on the other side. Justin Jefferson, while he's obviously one of, if not the best receiver in the game, that quad injury is definitely nothing to mess with against a physical defense. It's something that they're not going to let him play through it if he gets hit again. Frankly, they're going to be cautious with it, especially having started season the way they have 2-0. I think that they've got some real hopes and aspirations here at this point. I know they may be short lived, but they certainly have them. So I'm going to be off of it most of the way here. I love Nico Collins. He's a true alpha. He's really emerged. I think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. He's got the body to do it, and he really knows how to use his frame well. So for me, though, there's still too many mouths to feed. You've got Diggs, you've got Nico, and I'm going to be off of it, frankly. I think it's a great game to watch. I think the Vikings are a strong teaser leg if you're getting 8.5 or 8, but mostly gonna sit this one out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the Jefferson injury stuff makes me really shy to play him, and I think it'll make everybody shy to play him, right? And so I do think there is some opportunity in tournaments to play Justin Jefferson by himself or in a Sam Darnold stack and have that completely go off at whatever, 8% or 7% ownership. I will say this about Tank Dell. He's the lowest priced receiver. They tried to get him involved last week. Him and CJ Stroud just weren't on the same page, but I expect that to get better. And with a really kind of gambling Brian Flores defense, it wouldn't shock me at all if that aggression is taken advantage of by Tank Dell specifically, rather than Stephon Diggs or Nico Collins. So I think that's where I'm looking for. He's not a punt. He's 5,200, but I could see him, grabbing 100 yards or 90 yards and a touchdown or two in obviously an optimal game. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, we got to mention Cam Akers only because it is possible. I haven't seen Thursday's practice report yet, but we did not see Mixon yesterday. Not overly concerning on a Wednesday still. Starting to get concerning if you're not seeing him out there Thursday, though. If Mixon were to sit, I do think Akers, we're not talking about a long-term serious injury for Mixon. It's just likely a 1 week and sit kind of thing. So in those situations, I do think Akers would just touch the football 20 plus times.
Yeah. And we got to keep an eye on Dameon Pierce there too. Meg, go ahead.
Yeah, to your point, Sia, on the like Viking stack or bring it back with Tank Dell. Tank Dell does have a lot of great underlying usage. Mike made a good point. This would be like a large field play, or to what we talk about, it could be like a good 1 p.m. early only type play.
Yeah.
Or is this is in the 1 p.m. window?
Yeah, it's a 1 p.m.
Yeah. So this would be a good like early only play, I think, because you're getting contrarian, and maybe it is one of the spicier games of the early only slate.
Absolutely. Again, we can't stress it enough. Play different slates to different types of tournaments, smaller tournaments to try to reach the pay line, different ways to play other than just throwing a contest into a 10,000 entry or 20,000 entry field. So something to keep in mind. All right, the last 1 o'clock game that will probably speed through, Giants at the Browns. Giants are 6.5-point dogs here, 38.5-point total. I think there's an argument to play Browns. Deshaun Watson, I think there's an argument to play him. Maybe Jordan Akins at 3K, argument there. Ford and Deontay Foreman, looks like they're splitting work depending on the game script. I'll probably stay away from that. And on the Giants, to me, it's Malik Neighbors or nobody. Meg, I start with you. Any interest here?
I'm going to target Neighbors with that amazing target share. I'm sorry, not in this game, but in games like last week where he's got a great matchup that the bad quarterback can take advantage of, like Daniel Jones and Neighbors did last week. So I'm not going to target him against a tough Browns defense. And the Browns side, I'm just, again, I like too many other pieces. So many other games and too many other pieces elsewhere. So this is a game as a stay away for me.
Yeah, Mike, is it a stay away for you as well?
The game itself's not a stay away. I will stay away from Malik Neighbors here. Again, I've loved him. We've talked about him multiple times on this show. And we were dead on last week. He saw the exact same thing we saw from Chris Godwin week 1 against the Commanders. It's a product of the Commanders and the way they play. Malik Neighbors absolutely popped in that game and frankly should have had more fantasy points than he did. Dropped a really critical 4th and 4, the easiest catch he had all day.
Yeah.
And was potentially looking at another touchdown for him in that situation. So when I look at this game, though, I love Deshaun. He's 5,500, and this is the matchup for it to pop. I'm not saying that Deshaun's better than Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is elite. He's awesome. He's best rookie by a mile. But this is a similar situation to what we saw last week. I just think with more efficiency. The Browns' offensive line is much better than the Commanders. They're going to have more efficiency. They're going to score points. So I do like Deshaun Watson at 5,500. I will be playing Deshaun Watson this week. As far as stacking him, I think you could play him naked. I think you could stack him with the tight end Akins. I'm not going to get cute and try to play Amari Cooper. I don't mind it if you want to. And then the other one, Foreman. I'm going to play some Foreman. I think that he's going to grab carries again. Now, caveat there. If we have a situation where Joe Mixon's ruled out, we're going to be looking at the Texans running back situation more than Foreman. But as of right now, Foreman at 4,400 is in the player pool.
Yeah, in the positive game script, Foreman is the guy. Just out of curiosity, you wouldn't play Foreman with Deshaun Watson, would you?
Probably not. Okay. If you're going to do that, you've got to have a bet down on the Browns team total over at that point, because you're going to need 30 points out of them for those two to both get there. You're likely going to need Deshaun rushing touchdowns, Foreman rushing touchdowns, things like that. So, probably not stacking them together. Foreman's in the player pool with some of my Dak Prescott lineups, again, as a salary saver to make things work. But Watson, I do love Deshaun Watson this week.
Dak Prescott, you say? We got to get to that game. Let's go to our first 4 o'clock game, 1st to 5. By the way, Deontay Foreman, 4,400 on DraftKings. Let's go to our first 4 o'clock game. We'll probably go through this one pretty quickly as well, although there's some pieces here. Carolina +5 at the Raiders. Obviously, Andy Dalton is the quarterback. That's a big bump up to the receivers. I don't think I'm breaking news there. Perhaps a bump up to guys like Chuba Hubbard. Not really sure. Mike, I want to get your opinion on this one. I think Deontay Johnson at 4,900 is a pretty savvy play. I think Devontae Adams is really interesting at 7,600. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, there's a couple pieces. I could still get to Brock Bowers. I know the price point's coming up. He's elite and going to continue to get involved. So we know the Raiders. It's been fascinating. They're pass heavy. They're trying to do their best Cincinnati Bengals impression of essentially throwing the football. The thing that I'll say about the Raiders that's interesting, though, they're the only team in the NFL so far this season that doesn't have a drive of 10 plus plays. They really have not been good. They beat the Ravens in a crazy game, but they have not been a good team really at all. So as far as the Panthers side, I lean the Panthers in this game with the points, played them plus 5.5. When I look at this matchup, I think Deontay Johnson is fine. I think he's got a ton of upside. Having said that, I think the community is sharp enough that he's going to get steamed in terms of ownership. For me, if I had to play someone on the Carolina side, it's actually Chuba Hubbard. And as much as I've talked negatively about him the first few weeks, I do think they'll be able to run the football a little bit here against the Raiders. I think it's that pass rush you've got to be worried about. But I also think he's going to catch passes. The thing about Chuba Hubbard that's been welcome, he had 5 targets, caught 4 of them last week from Bryce. I think Andy Dalton's still going to get the ball out quickly. So for me, if I had to play someone here, Chuba Hubbard's actually guy number 1 for me in this game.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. And I love that he brought up Brock Bowers because I meant to bring him up as well at 5,400. The guy's an animal right now and a favorite of Gardner Minshew. Meg, what do you like in this one?
Bowers is my favorite. So Bowers is kind of the one I'm circling the most. It is nice that I do believe as well that Dalton will elevate Deontay Johnson and the rest of the offense. So I do think that makes Chubbard in play. I just don't know that I'll get there, but Bowers is the one I'm the most interested in.
All right. And anybody on the your comments on Chuba Hubbard, does he make it into your pool?
I think Mike makes an excellent point. So it's definitely someone I will consider, but it wasn't someone that I was high on, at this point. But I think Mike makes an excellent point, especially with the offense being elevated by Dalton likely.
Speaking of value running backs, let's get to our next game. This Dolphins at Seattle game. I believe the total is in that 42 range now. Seattle favored by a few points here. Zach Charbonnet, it looks like he's going to be the guy and not Ken Walker. It does look like Ken Walker's sitting out. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Do we like the value on a 6K Zach Charbonnet, and is that all we're playing on that side of the ball?
I'm not going to play Charbonnet. I don't love the situation here. And frankly, I do question how good Seattle is. I know that they've gotten off to a good start. They were my survivor play in week 1, but they played a rookie quarterback in his NFL debut. And then they played the New England Patriots and needed overtime to get there, right? So I love Miami in this game. I bet Miami plus 4.5. I think they're very live to win it outright. Skylar Thompson, while he did not look good in that game, you have to be keeping things in mind. That was a game that he never envisioned that he was going to be entering. No one on that staff really did. It's very different when you've got a week to prepare and to plan. He's got a number of weapons that are absolutely elite. Devon Achane out of the backfield, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mostert's potentially coming back. He practiced yesterday. I think that they will have a great game plan, and I think they're going to have some success. So, yes, I love Achane. The price point is insane. The volume should be more insane. I prefer Achane straight up over Alvin Kamara this week, and I feel very confident about that. So I think he's going to be heavily, heavily involved. I think he, again, if any indication of what they think about him, look at what they did at Buffalo when he was truly questionable entering that game. They want to continue to use him. And as they do, it's going to open things up for Tyreek. So I do love Achane. I do like Tyreek Hill a lot. I think Tyreek Hill goes massively, massively under-owned here. I'm playing Tyreek. So.
Meg, I was thinking about that going into this show that like nobody's going to want to play Tyreek. It's like they feel like they get a break from him because they don't have to pay the high price for him. They can play some other guy that they don't normally play. And sounds to me like that's the reason to play him. Do you like Achane? Do you like Tyreek Hill? Who else do you like in this one?
I agree with Mike. I like Achane the most for paying up in this game. So I have definitely some interest there. And I agree with him that to me, Charbonnet just doesn't look efficient. Like I'm not impressed by him. He got the volume, he got the touchdown, but he doesn't look efficient. So I'm not going to play a chalky Charbonnet when I'd rather play like a chalky Jordan Mason. So that's how I'm handling that. So I'm kind of off Seattle to Mike's point and interested in Achane.
Yeah, I think for me it might be Achane and then get out, but I absolutely love what's going to end up being a contrarian Tyreek Hill play. Interesting that these receivers that can go for 150 and 2 touchdowns like Tyreek Hill, like Justin Jefferson, are not going to have a lot of ownership because of the situations that they're coming into. Let's move on to the next game here, and it doesn't sound like any of you are going to play DK Metcalf. That's funny. That'll be a funny nickname when he doesn't have a good game. Decaf. DK Metcalf, JSN, Tyler Lockett. It doesn't sound like they're on your radars. Let's go to the 49ers and the Rams. This is around a 44.5 point total. Niners favored by 7, understandably, because the offensive line is ravaged. The skill players ravaged for the Rams. Obviously, CMC and Debo out for the Niners as well. Meg, I start with you. I think some of these receivers are going to have some interest on the Rams side. It's just a matter of which one you pick. And if there's 4 to pick from, maybe that means you pick none of them. Jordan Whittington, the most interesting one to me at 4,200. What do you like on that Rams side? And then give me your Niners.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Rams side. It's Whittington for me. The price just makes sense, kind of filling into the cup role. So it's Whittington for me for both price and his role for the Rams. 49ers, I like a lot of them because we know what happens with the 49ers when some of those studs are missing. When CMC and Debo are removed, you're seeing a major bump in usage for both Kittle and Ayuk. And then, of course, we know for Mason as well. And then, of course, Purdy. I mean, he threw for, I believe, over 300 yards last week. I think we could go back to the well and you could do like a double stack with Purdy. Or even if you want to do Purdy, Mason, Kittle or something like that. I'd like the 49ers side in this game. Certainly in like a 4 p.m. only. I mean, we'll get to another game where there's a stack I really like as well. But I don't mind attacking the 49ers and just bringing it back with maybe one cheap piece like Whittington.
Yeah, Mike, there's a lot to address here because Juwan Jennings at 4,100. If you like Brock Purdy, you might like Juwan Jennings. I know there's Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell and Cowing in there too. George Kittle, Jordan Mason at 6,200 seems way too cheap, obviously. So what do you like on that San Fran side? And are you playing anybody? Obviously, I didn't even mention Kyron Williams on the Rams side.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mason's the free square this week. It's really hard to get away from it. He had a lot of success on the ground in that game, and frankly, they probably should have went to him even more than they did against Minnesota. So I think that that's going to be a clear play there. Juwan Jennings, I do like the call. He's obviously not Debo Samuel, but he is physical and he can catch the ball over the middle of the field. So he is going to have those targets. Brandon Ayuk's certainly going to get targeted more. He's run very poorly in terms of just overall variance in terms of scoring. So I do like him. I put him closer to the Chris Godwin role here, which is kind of crazy because he definitely never gets that volume. I think he could in this spot, but it's going to be very dependent on the Rams' ability to push and make this a game. So as far as people on the Rams side, I think you can play Robinson, Tyler Johnson, things like that. But I don't Whittington. I think there are a number of guys that can be played. I'm not getting to a bunch just yet, mostly just Mason in this game. But that's because I've got some other value plays sprinkled in. And my builds are going to look a little different because I'm not playing the Saints.
Okay. I think we pretty much covered that game. There's 2 games that we got to get to that are high flyer games, especially in that 4:00 hour. One is the Ravens and the Cowboys. Obviously, we know the circumstances with these two teams pretty dire. Cowboys 1-1. I wouldn't say that's dire, but they got blown. The doors got blown off at home against the Saints last week, and the Ravens are 0-2. It's a tight spread. It's a high total. It's a perfect setup, Meg. It sounds like you like this game from a stacking standpoint.
I really do. I mean, we saw what Mahomes and Rice did week 1 against the Ravens, and then we saw what Gardner Minshew and Devontae Adams did. So I feel pretty confident in Dak and CeeDee Lamb, and so that's my favorite stack of the week. I love Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb stack. I don't mind some Ravens pieces, but I don't know that I'm really forcing anything. It looks like Mark Andrews' ownership isn't too crazy. You could go there. Likely it's coming much lower since Andrews got more usage last week. Zay Flowers is a little too expensive for me. And then, I always love playing Henry, but you have to play the right game script. And I just don't know. It could go either way. It could be Ravens get ahead and you'd want to play Henry and he'd be lower owned. But it's a risk because if Dallas gets ahead, we know that Henry gets scripted out. And I don't know that I'm willing to take that risk. So I likely won't be playing Henry. Flowers is a little too expensive for me. Maybe one of the tight ends at lower ownership to run back, but Dak and CeeDee Lamb. And then if you wanted like a cheap piece like a Tolbert, I don't mind that as well.
Jalen Tolbert at 3,800 is interesting. Mike, because of the game that we're going to talk about right after this one, I'm actually largely out on this game, and I'm kind of hoping it ends up being kind of a Lamar Jackson, like we talked about with the Jalen Hurts Saints game, where it becomes more of a ball control Lamar, Derrick Henry, like a plethora of receivers and Zay and Likely and Andrews and, maybe Bateman and Aguilar get in the mix. Am I wrong? Like, do I need to be stacking this game?
I don't know if you have to stack it. I do love the Cowboys stack only because I think that it's just going to be a game where I'm very confident in Baltimore's ability to score. We're less confident about where the scoring comes from. So, and just price points become a little more prohibitive. So I'm on the Dallas side. I like Dak to CD. CD Lamb, my favorite player of the week at any position. We'll be playing him in essentially every lineup, probably every lineup. You look at what Devontae Adams was able to do in this matchup last week, and CeeDee Lamb at this point in their careers is drastically better than Devontae Adams. He's going to get the targets. And then I want to see on Jake Ferguson if he's back. If he's back, he's going to be used. Dak wants to throw to a tight end. We saw it last week with Shoemaker. It's going to happen again here. So for me, if I had to play a Raven, it would be Lamar. Lamar sitting 0-2. We saw what Lamar did week 1 against Kansas City, and that was Lamar essentially being a little selfish. He's a great player, great athlete, but he was being selfish in the sense that, like, I can beat Kansas City and I'm going to go show you. And he took off running 16 times. That's what I think happens here in this game. I think that he is very frustrated by an 0-2 start. He takes this opportunity to run. We already know Dallas has the ability to generate a pass rush. I personally think that we see a ton of Lamar with his legs, which is why I'm out on everyone else on the team. If I had to play anybody, it would be Lamar. Undecided if I'm actually playing him yet in my 5 core lineups, but if I'm playing more than 5, I'm definitely playing a little bit of Lamar.
And let me ask you this. If you're stacking Dak with CD and maybe Ferguson or whoever else, this is one of those games where it doesn't necessarily require a run back, correct?
Yeah, no run back. The primary Dak lineups have no run back. The other thing that I will likely, if I play Lamar, it'll essentially be Lamar, CeeDee Lamb, and one other Dallas pass catcher, ideally Ferguson in the tight end spot. Okay, basically just betting that Lamar's ground game outscores Dak's passing game, but Dak still has a good game to CD.
Interesting. So again, we've seen this before on FFT DFS where Mike's going with the quarterback on the other side, but effectively, air quotes, stacking him with 2 pass catchers. And he just told you why, because of that rushing equity versus the passing equity. But again, big on Dak, big on this game in general. I'm kind of big on this Arizona Cardinals-Lions game. We'll run through this real quick, and then we'll get to our cheat sheet and Mike's top 3 at each position. I like Kyler Murray. I just love how he's playing. I like grabbing Kyler Murray early in the season. I think, I don't know that I need to stack him with Marvin Harrison at Marvin Harrison's price. I think Trey McBride at 6,200 is still a value. Other side of the ball, I mean, we could talk about all of these guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe a little too expensive for me, but Jameson Williams at 5,800, interesting price. Laporta at 6K hasn't done much. Meg, are you interested in this game, and which side are you more interested in?
I'm actually the opposite of you, Sia. I am very interested I'm more interested in the Lions side. I think this could be a bounce back for the Lions and then the Cardinals coming off that major win. But it's more, messing around with Aiden Hutchinson and that defensive line of the Lions with Kyler and Connor. Kyler and James Conner look amazing to start the season. I 100% agree with you, but I don't think I learned my lesson with the game last week against the Bucs. You don't mess around with Aiden Hutchinson and that defensive line. And so I think I'm going to stay away from the Arizona side, but I don't mind pieces of various pieces, whether either running backs in play for me from the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, they're all in play for me. Not all in the same lineup, obviously, but they're all in play for me because I think Lions win, and I think multiple pieces could get there. So I'll have all those guys in my pool, but I'm off the Cardinals.
All right, Mike, break the tie. Are you A, on this game, and B, if so, which side are you on?
I'll be on the game in ways, but it's really split pretty evenly. I do think the Lions win. I liked them a lot more at 2.5 than 3 in terms of a betting market price. I do think Kyler and company, they'd look decent to start the year in terms of offense, and that's because Kyler's had the ability to get outside the pocket. I do think Dan Campbell's defense will do their best to keep him in the pocket and force him to beat him. And I think it's obviously easier to do that when you've got a guy like Aiden Hutchinson. So having said that, if I had to play someone on the Arizona side, I still like Kyler because I think he's got some of that rushing upside, but it would be Trey McBride would be the guy I would look at there. On the Lions side, I like Jahmyr Gibbs quite a bit. I think he's just another running back that's going to get completely overlooked this week because the price point's creeping up there. He's right around Achane. He's right around Connor, Henry, Dobbins, but he's way less. Kamara, people want to play Kamara, Barkley. I think he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game. The Lions have thrown the ball to running backs a lot, and I think that continues, especially if the Cardinals are able to push it all here.
All right. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I don't think I need to follow up anything there. As I in or out on Trey McBride, Mike.
I'm in on McBride. My McBride exposure overall is going to depend heavily on Jake Ferguson's availability for the Cowboys.
And Meg, it sounds like you're probably out on Trey McBride.
I think so. I think I like other tight ends more in other spots. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's, I'll tell you what, we got to get to Mike's top 3 at each position, which we're going to do. And of course, our cheat sheets, we're going to do that right after this message from our partner. All right, Mike, normally we would do the cheat sheets and then we would do the top 3 at each position. But you got to be on CBS Sports Network and about 10 minutes, you're doing the NFL preview with the Dream Team. So hopefully if you all got CBS Sports Network, you're going to want to tune into that. Let's go ahead and do your top 3 at each position.
All right, let's go quarterbacks here. No surprise if you've watched the show thus far, it's going to be Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, and I'm making a pivot from what I have on the screen here. It's going to be Lamar Jackson. I have talked myself in to skinny Lamar running the football. I will play Lamar Jackson, but it's Dak Prescott first, Deshaun Watson second, and Lamar Jackson, the 3 quarterbacks I'm playing this week.
And Kyler was on the outside looking in.
Kyler's on the outside looking in. I will probably still get to a Kyler lineup, but I have fully talked myself into Lamar Jackson rushing.
All right, running backs.
Josh Jacobs. I love Jacobs just a volume standpoint. Nobody has run worse in terms of overall scoring relative to their volume. Multiple touchdowns called back off the board. He's going to touch the ball a lot. Number 2, Jordan Mason. I believe Mason's a free square here. He's going to be heavily involved, and the price point's just too good. That's the one I'm more than willing to eat the chalk on. Number 3 and 4, I'm going to give you 2. Number 3 really is Devon Achane, but you can't play all these guys with the salary cap. But it should be Devon Achane. I'm going to play him a lot. And then Deontay Foreman for now. Again, Browns, I think they have an easy time with the Giants. And I think Foreman is the guy that when they're leading, touches the football 10 times in the second half of that game.
All right, wide receiver.
CeeDee Lamb, number 1. Love me some CeeDee Lamb this week. I think that, we just saw what Devontae Adams was able to do against Baltimore. This is in a dome and a controlled environment at home. CeeDee Lamb's going to get peppered with targets. Devontae Smith, number 2. Devontae is going to get peppered with targets. I think the Eagles are going to be able to hold the football quite a bit in this game. Love Devontae. And then number 3, again, I know you can't play all these guys together unless you get very creative at quarterback, but Tyreek Hill. I'm playing a ton of Tyreek Hill. We'll be mixing in a lot of value plays. As far as which value plays, I like Britton Covey for the Eagles. I like any of the Rams or 49ers secondary options as value plays there.
And then finally, tight end.
We're going to go Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson listed questionable. Love me some Jake Ferguson, though. Just the price point, $4,500. Dak loves throwing to tight ends, especially in competitive games or trailing game script games. If not, it's going to be Brock Bowers. Still too cheap for the upside that he represents. And Trey McBride. I think I think the Lions are going to contain Kyler in the pocket as much as they can. And I think we're talking quicker releases, and that's where McBride's going to thrive.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit on Trey McBride. I like all 3 of those quite a bit. All right, Mike, before we let you out of here, maybe 30 seconds on, is tonight's showdown, is it just going to be kickers and running backs? Is that effectively what we're doing? And if everybody's doing that, what are you going to do?
Yeah, so I wish I had more for you guys right now. I will on Sportsline a little bit later. I have not run the final updates for tonight. Thursdays, as you know, can be very, very hectic in the NFL schedule. But as far as like gut reaction, yeah, I think it's going to be heavy running backs, and the Jets essentially use the running backs as wide receivers. Braylon Allen's going to mix in. Breece Hall is going to be there. The defenses are both in play. Garrett Wilson should have a field day if you look at what the Seahawks were able to do. As far as a contrarian standpoint, I still think that playing both defenses is probably not a poor move. We've seen Breece Hall put the ball on the ground already in just lower scoring environment, but we'll have more on Sportsline later this afternoon.
You're going to want to check that out. You're going to want to check Mike out in 10 minutes on CBS Sports Network. Mike, we'll let you go as Meg and I finish the show. Thanks for being here today, buddy.
See you guys. Good luck.
See you.
Alrighty. Good stuff from Mike. Again, he's on CBS Sports Network every Thursday. I think the last time it might have been at 2, but it's at 12 o'clock today. And he does, Meg, and if you haven't seen it already, an NFL preview. And sometimes, just so everybody knows, that NFL preview, game-by-game preview, he does it with, I think, Larry Hartstein, R.J. White, and Will Brinson, maybe. And that gets put on the Sportsline YouTube channel. So for some reason you're not already subscribed to the Sportsline YouTube channel, you're going to want to check that out, but you can catch them live in 10 minutes. Meg, let's talk a little cheat sheet. I'm looking at your cheat sheet right now. I'm cheating by looking at it. And Dak and CeeDee Lamb, man, you and Mike have me convinced on this one, because I honestly was kind of looking another direction. I don't know that I'm going to get to as many stacks of those two, but I'm in on CeeDee Lamb. I probably should be in on both. Talk to me about your stack.
Well, it felt good to be in line when
Yeah,
Mike said that too.
always
I was
does.
like, okay, well, that feels good. I just love this spot for them. Again, we've mentioned what other quarterback receiver combos have done against the Ravens in the first two games. So I really think, especially coming off that blowout last week, love Prescott and Lamb this week.
All right, who's your chalk buy?
We talked about it. Jordan Mason, just the free square. Absolutely love it. I actually like Kamara more than Mike. I'm going to play him more. I mean, this Eagles defense has been gashed by running backs. So Kamara is a little chalky. I'm still going to go to him, but Jordan Mason is the free square.
And the chalk fades.
It's kind of Seattle. It's DK Metcalf, who was amazing last week. And I'm just not impressed with Zach Charbonnet coming in with, it looked like, a lot of ownership. And he's only, a couple $100 left than Jordan Mason and some other running backs I like. So just fading Charbonnet.
Yeah, it's interesting about Charbonnet because, people thought he was going to be splitting with Ken Walker coming into the season, or at least have more of a share. And Seahawks were pretty clear, no, this is Ken Walker's backfield. It's very much not Zach Charbonnet. So to your point, now that Ken Walker looks like he's going to be sidelined for maybe another week or two, we're not expecting a ton outside of volume from Zach Charbonnet. So I get the Zach Charbonnet play, but I understand also being out on him. Who's the contrarian play?
Contrarian play for me is likely going to be Saquon Barkley. If it is, I'm seeing it right now around 8%. If it is that low, I really like it. I like both running backs in that game. I just think that's the way you could attack it. So it's going to be Barkley for me in a bounce back after not bringing that catch in.
I mean, how do you not catch that?
That was
just
wild.
Imagine what the narrative would have been if he catches that. Not just about that play, but
of the NFL, right?
Yeah, it's just crazy. I don't want to go into the call and how bad it was and all that, but Meg, you and I could have caught that 99 out of 100 times. It's just what do we? No, I think you could. It's just one of those, statistical anomalies. It's the outlier. He missed the catch. Who's the value play?
Value play for me, I agreed with you on the Whittington call. I like that, and I do like the 49ers, so to me that's a cheap run back. But I'll also mention Shaheed. It's not super cheap. It's 5.3K, but he's getting, his underlying usage is actually really strong. I mean, obviously Olave is as well. I know I said I like both running backs in that game, but if you want to throw Shaheed on top of that at only 5.3K, I really do like that.
Yeah, I like Shaheed too. I just love the upside that you're potentially getting with Shaheed against an Eagles defense that just is not healthy and doesn't look very good. Just one more thing says, are we concerned with Nico, JJ, and CD on the injury report? Well, we addressed really all of those earlier if you joined us late. I mean, moderately concerned. I honestly think the only one to really be concerned about is Justin Jefferson. I think Nico, I understand he had the foot issue, but I honestly think that's more of a Wednesday rest day thing, and we'll see about Thursday's practice report. But I think Nico's going to be fine. I do like Tank Dell as a contrarian play in that game, just as an FYI. And then CeeDee Lamb, I don't think we should be super concerned about that. But obviously, it's Thursday morning, right, Meg? So we got to wait for the injury reports. My cheat sheet, I'm going to go Kyler Murray to Trey McBride. I think that game has the potential to really shoot out like the score indicates, not breaking any news there. And again, I think Kyler Murray's ability to throw right now, but also skate outside of the pocket. I mean, let's remember when he gets pressure that he's going to be even more inclined to scramble. And that could lead to, 2, 3, 4, 15, 18, 20-yard scrambles. I mean, Kyler Murray is the dude to do that. So I like Kyler to Trey McBride. I like your stack as well, Dak to CeeDee Lamb. I think I might mess around with a Sam, just to be contrarian and maybe a bigger turn, a Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson stack, and maybe even a Gardner Minshew to Devontae, Brock Bowers stack. That could be slate specific. In other words, I might play that on the 4:00 slate and just try to get lucky with that. But Kyler to Trey is my favorite. My chalk buy, I hate to rehash, but Jordan Mason, that's going to be my chalk buy. I think I'm going to end up fading Josh Jacobs. I have a lot of respect for this Titans defense, and I understand he's going to get the volume, but I would just rather go in different directions. How many running backs are we going to play, right? I can only play so many, even across all my lineups. I can only play so many. So I think I might end up being out on Josh Jacobs, but I totally get the argument to play him. Contrarian play, Tank Dell, I mentioned at 5,200. I think Devontae Adams is really interesting. I saw something from Jacob Gibbs at CBS Sports about the coverage he's going to face and that it's likely going to be one high as opposed to two high, and how and I don't want to quote Jacob Gibbs because I'll mess it up. He's a lot smarter than me. But against one high, Devontae Adams, if I'm remembering that correctly, absolutely feasts. So it could be a big day. And I do think the Panthers could give him a bit of a back and forth with guys like Deontay Johnson and Andy Dalton and Chuba Hubbard. So I think that game's really interesting. My value play, Jordan Whittington, 4,200, Juwan Jennings at 4,100. But a decent number of value receivers in that 4K range that we've already talked about on this show. Meg, did we miss anything? Was there something, a game? Maybe I didn't go to you in something and you're like, oh, man, I wish he came back to me. Anything you can think of?
No, I think we covered it. I think we even covered how you and I both like short slates, and there's certain games that you could maybe target, like you said, that Devontae stack, or you talked about the Sam Darnold, Jefferson Naylor stack. I think those could be maybe, slate specific, early only, afternoon only. So I really like those call outs. And no, I think we covered it. I mean, I think there's really like we were usually seeing right now, 3 or 4 games that we're really going to want to gravitate to. And that makes a lot of sense. But, I think there's enough contrarian pieces that we can get contrarian around those games.
And I do want to remind everybody, we have well over 200 still, even though we're about to close the show, still in watching this show live. We actually have the contest. It's a $5 DraftKings contest. It's in the comments. I think Nada's probably going to post it again right here so that you can just register $5. Only 200 people can enter, and we have 200 people in here. So if you all just click that link, it's at the top of the chat right now, but I think Nada's about to put it in to the chat. But it's also, if you're listening to the podcast, it's in the podcast description on the YouTube description. It always will be. I also usually tweet it out on Wednesday mornings. So if you follow me on Twitter, you can usually find me tweeting it around early afternoon. Again, let's try to get into that contest. Let's fill it up. It's super fun. And I gotta remember, Meg, to give shout outs to those who win. We've got 2 winners so far. I haven't even shouted them out yet, which means I'm not doing my job very well. Any closing thoughts on this week 3 slate, Meg?
No, just excited for another one. I need to bounce back. I didn't get to say how I did last week. I had a decent week 1, did not have a great week 2 because I wasn't on Kamara and Metcalf and some of the smash pieces you needed. So looking to bounce back this week. Bounce back.
I'll say this, Meg. I ended up having a good afternoon slate, not great full slate, and that was Kamara specific, I suppose.
Right.
But I will say this. I got a lot of comments from people saying that they did well. I got a lot of tweets at me saying people did well. I think people are really invested in the conversation and the picks. And so let's all, it's true. Let's all have a great week 3. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Nada on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, on behalf of all of you in the chat, thanks for being in here. On behalf of Meg Shoup and of course, Mike McClure, I'm Sia Nejad. What a great show. We'll see you next Thursday at 11 o'clock on Fantasy Football Today, DFS.